Welcome to Beyond the Caseload, Mission, Laughs, and Life at PPT, where we talk honestly about life in pediatric therapy, the chaos, the laughs, the growth, and the moments that make it all worth it. Your hosts are Regina, a speech-language pathologist and rehab director of West Palm Beach, and Tara, HR director, bringing you real conversations from Beyond the Caseload.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Beyond the Caseload. I'm Tara, the Human Resources Director for Progressive Pediatric Therapy, and today I'm joined by Regina.
Hi, and I am the Rehab Director at our West Palm Beach location.
And Aimee.
Hi, I'm Aimee Brueck, CEO as well as physical therapist for Progressive Pediatric Therapy and founder of PPT for Ed, our nonprofit.
Today we're going to talk about growth and innovation with intention. Let's start by asking Aimee some questions. Aimee, when we talk about growth, what does that actually mean for PPT?
Oh, wow. Growth. That's a big word, right? And so when I look at it, we've been around for 15 years now. Wow. And sometimes we're growth in, we saw more children or we had more therapists. But growth isn't always about seeing more, or it's about really looking at the whole picture of what's happening. And I think growth comes from looking forward thinking and saying, okay, what is going on? What can we do better? So either it's systems. Can we improve our systems to become more efficient, make things easier for therapists to document? Or maybe recently we were looking at our review process. We were also looking at what are therapists, what makes them happy. And so having flexibility, what looks like their schedules, and how can we still give them the benefits they need so that they're not burnt out or feeling spread thin. Growth comes from looking at the picture of what's happening in Florida. In Florida, we have 500,000 children in Florida that have developmental or behavioral needs. Mm-hmm. And as we know, because we're struggling with it now too, we're only serving about half of those children because of the lack of workforce, right? Yeah. We're really struggling on this. And so we have to look at that growth of saying, how do we grow in making sure that our therapists are not feeling that way? How do we adapt and change to that? That's growth. And then we have to look at growth of how are we serving that gap when we don't have some of these things. And so when that comes to growth, I look at more of filling the gap. That's part of our nonprofit in that education and training. Mm-hmm. Education and training is where we're growing this year in reaching more people. So this podcast, right, is about being able to reach our workforce, this part of our podcast, but then we have our other part of our podcast that's really teaching about development and looking at forward thinking of our children, identifying those before they become problems, and hoping that we don't need ongoing services because we're having a lack of ability to do that. So we want to educate our parents, but then also educating our educators because our educators are struggling. So I'm very much looking at growth from a mission, vision, and the nonprofit has helped us to be able to and that's where I think this year I'm really focusing on being able to expand upon that and also looking at our workforce in that growth and how we can, and specialty of services. We are known across the community as providing excellent care. We have the most amazing therapists, and some things that the therapists have even asked for growth is looking at, hey, I really specialize in this area and I want to give back to the kids that I'm good at. So we're trying to do better at that. So those are the things that right now, looking forward, looking at what we're doing for growth this year, we're focused on. We're not able to serve as many children right now. Growth, like I said, we've continued to stay steady where we are. Growth can look at the amount of children, or growth can look at your systems in place, the way that you're filling in gaps, the way that you're looking at your workforce and trying to make sure that you're listening to them, but then also being able to provide. So I don't know if that explains growth.
So being very intentional about growth.
Not just looking at numbers per se, but looking at how can we grow in the community in those areas that are not being touched on, or those families who aren't getting services. What are some other ways we can help that,
and growing as clinicians.
But how do you ensure growth protects that clinical quality and patient care? Especially, I love this question because once upon a time, PPT was just a clinic, and then now it's grown. So with the growth, with all these avenues you want to go down, how do you maintain that quality of care and that quality for our families and patients?
So many different ways. I think I always am looking at where we have almost 80 therapists, and we serve quite a large amount in the South Florida area. And then we have practices from all over the nation that seek out us for educating, and we start to see areas that maybe we could improve on, that the therapists aren't educated as much in this area. A couple different things that we do is our clinical ladders. So we have found feeding is a really big thing, right? Mm-hmm. And that every child needs to be able to get the best nutrition for growth, mental, physical growth, and daily livings. Mm-hmm. We really have looked at our feeding recently and saying, how can we equip our therapists to be the best feeding therapists? And we first send them to a continuing education course to look at things holistically. Then how do we decide, does it go to an OT versus a speech? So that's like our feeding ladder. Yeah. And so we're continually growing in deciding who can see these children and who is the best equipped to see the types of children that we're getting, so making sure that we're putting the children with the right therapist. And then you talk about clinical, our AAC. So this is for children that you could probably explain it way better than I can. But,
let's hear it though.
But I think that for augmentative communication, we're looking at how we can best provide that service and do our evaluations and training, how we can program those devices and equipping our therapists to do that and doing that extra education and training they need that they don't get in school. We make sure that we do that. The other areas is right now we're looking at our wheelchair and equipment, and that's something we found across our community is a need. We're looking at potentially a certification course, taking some of our ladders and making them certifications so other therapists can participate and learn within our community. When you talk about clinical, we're always looking for areas that are a need within our community. Recently we taught bike riding course here. We didn't even know how to do this, and we brought in people. So some of what I'm excited about is our training room. Our largest clinic is in the West Palm area, and that is an underserved population. Yeah. If you think about Palm Beach County, where is the underserved? It's Palm Beach, Riviera Beach, Belle Glade, that area, and we're right here in the middle. We have a beautiful continuing education and training room, and we want to bring other people in to serve the community, and that is part of our mission. Clinical, so bringing in people that have expertise. We're having a prompt course here this year, so we're bringing in people, but we're also sharing the knowledge we have, and how does that serve clinical growth for everyone within the community.
Yeah, and it's looking at the long term and helping those kids and families, to educating our staff now to help every child we see now in the future.
Right.
So why is education so important to us at PPT?
Education. Oh my goodness. Well, education is really important to serve those gaps, right? We just talked about that growth piece. Number one, we see burnout, right? We see burnout with therapists. And I think that burnout happens when you get tired. And when you learn something new, you get excited to be able to use that and practice that. When we think about education, even our onboarding, we really fine-tuned that this past year, continuing to fine-tune that to help each therapist in their unique ways to educate them so that they can be the best therapist. We talk about our workforce and how much we're having a challenge with it. So we didn't just sit there and complain. We came up with, okay, we need to really help our students to be successful. And so we've improved our student program so that we can help to equip them so that when they come out into the workforce, they are more educated because they know how to write a daily note efficiently, write an evaluation efficiently. So that's that documentation piece of education. But then from the clinical, from maybe even myself, I've been practicing for over 20 years and I continually am educating, and I have to because I get excited, right? When you don't feed yourself, you get sometimes burnt out. And I think that's so common. Even on the way to this podcast, I was listening to a leadership podcast, and who would have known that the whole podcast was about growth? I was just like, I can't believe that I'm listening to this right now. But it fed me, right? And I got excited about coming here, talking to everyone, and talking about the podcast because I'd fed myself. So the same thing with our therapists and even our administrative staff this past week. We had a staff meeting and did a lot with our website. We have really invested in putting more video content on there for parents and for our administration and for our therapists, because we just did a podcast on bilingual, bilingual speech or communication. And I, being the 20 years that I've been practicing, did not know about some of the things that happen with children that mix languages, or maybe there's silent periods, things that I learned in that podcast, okay? So that's going on our website so that we can share that and educate our parents, educate our administrative staff who are talking to the parents, educate our students, our therapists. Education is a really big piece. It is.
Even when I talk to candidates about coming to work here, they always say that is something they haven't heard from any other employers they interviewed with. That sets us apart because that education piece is not offered like it is.
So how does this education part help with retention of staff? Like looking more long term?
If a therapist serves the mission and their passion for making a difference in the core values, then they're the right fit for you, and that they'll want to continue, they'll value that, right? Because I think that's important. Do they value that piece? And I think my younger self, we talk about when you're younger, you are growing and you don't know, obviously you have to put food on the table, you have to be able to pay your bills. I went into this field when I graduated as a physical therapist. I went into peds. It was Medicaid, not Medicare. I remember everyone saying to me, oh, well, you can make this in adults.
Yeah.
Like, why are you doing peds? And I always went in it because I love and have a passion for what I do. And I think that education for me has always been important, even myself, even as a clinician. Even when I was making very little money, I went and got NDT certified because I wanted to know how to treat a child from a holistic view. That was just always in my heart and continues to be. So from a retention perspective, it depends on the therapist and where their heart is. Where is their heart? Are they passionate for making a difference? Are they passionate for education? I mean, and I understand that we all have financial, and I'm not saying I believe as a practice that we look at each therapist and really look at things holistically. And we're consistent and we're fair. And we really have full conversations. This past year, we even instilled all different options for full-time to still get benefits because we saw that the workforce was asking for that. I think that for myself, retention is about education, but the therapist has to want that too.
Yep. It has to be important.
Yeah.
My next question for you is about AI. So you and I went to a conference and the biggest booths with the most people. We were like, what's going on there?
What's over there?
What are they selling? Is it a bar? What is it? Are they giving out food? But it was AI. So what can you tell us about how AI is the future and how will we integrate AI here?
I think we take steps. We need to embrace AI, but we have to be very careful and methodical. What I've learned through the years is don't jump. You really need to process and look at all. And I think that even when I have to make decisions, sometimes I make that quick decision. It's not the best decision. When it comes to AI, it can help in so many ways. It's helped us to develop programs, to do deep dives, look at research and be able to find that research a little bit faster. It's helped us to maybe look at our framework and say, is there any holes in this framework that we can improve upon? I think that right now we're just delving into AI from looking at processes in place that we have and saying, is there improvements we can make in that process? Looking at our foundations, we already have a very clear procedure, but I think we can always improve on that, and AI can help us to do that. That's where I'm using AI. Where I'd like to go with AI in the next year is moving it into our daily notes so that we can be more efficient as therapists to document. I think that I want to move into the daily note piece first, make sure that therapists like the way that works, then we can move into the evaluation piece. So that's kind of where we're going. What's really been different about us is, I hate to say it, but here in the state of Florida, we challenge with our reimbursement rates. We have a really big challenge here. As a practice, I thankfully have developed our own EMR years ago. I have friends who own practices the same size as mine that are in other states that their reimbursement rates might be a lot higher. And they're spending over $20,000 in an EMR a month.
Wow, that's crazy.
So if I did that, if I went to those AI companies and added this on, then that would take away from what I could offer our therapists. And so I have to make those decisions. My goal is really I'm going to invest in either I'm going to figure out how to code because I've gotten really good at having this whole EMR system that we've developed and even our sign-in system. Think about what we did this past year. That was something that we had. I mean, now it's made us
go to the lobby,
around, look for stickers.
I mean, it's definitely been so much more efficient. I think from a billing standpoint, that was something that I developed and put together an app last year. I don't know if I can do AI coding. Who knows? Maybe God will give me the right answers for that. But the goal is to get that into the daily news. That's how I think, like, for this year, how we're going to, and I think that AI is going to continue to obviously be a part of what we do, better, but I think I'm going slow and steady on that.
Okay, so
baby steps.
And that's kind of what my question was going to be. When you introduce these new upgrades or technology, how do you do that in such a large scale without it being a burden for therapists? What's your thought process?
So we have a test database. The first step would be we go into that test database, we put it in, and then we might trial it, make sure it works. If that works, then we go to large scale. So we do baby amounts of trying it. I think when we did the sign-in system, we tried it at one clinic location, and we made sure that it worked at that clinical location before we added it into the other clinic locations. And then if you remember, in 2026, we updated our sign-in app to be more clear from the things that we found worked and didn't work last year's.
And I think you're so good about that because you listen to what the group of people who are testing it out, and you tweak before you jump to the next step. And it's not like, this is what we're doing, guys. And you're so communicative about it because you let the information trickle down from directors to staff before anything happens. So everyone's already aware of the changes.
And I think that's something that I learned over time. At one point, we were doing a lot of changes, and everyone was like, "You're making changes all the time." And I was like, "Okay, you know what? We need to slow this down." And so I think that that's what I've learned now. We're making a change with our feeding template right now. So, I mean, we've taken about 2 months of going back and forth. By doing that and getting other people's feedback, we've actually tweaked it to a point where everyone's in agreement. I think that's what my goals are, to continue to do that, and I think that's what I've learned.
Yeah. Awesome. How are we expanding programs to evolve with everyone's needs? Yesterday I did a podcast about Gen Z. Those are different needs than when we all first began here.
Yeah.
So how do you think that PPT is evolving to meet the needs of the new generation?
I think that is where that adaptability and flexibility comes in. And I think that what I've learned is we have a recipe that works. So our recipe is looking at a strength-based approach with not only children, families, but also our therapists. And I think that with the Gen Z, I don't know, I don't really even identify people as Gen Z. I identify people as everyone has needs of their own. And I think that being able to understand what the needs of that person is really important. So we have a recipe that we stick to, and that recipe's worked for many years, but that doesn't mean we can't tweak that recipe a little bit based on the needs of our staff. This past year, we found that we used to have one option, 32 hours or 40 to be a full-time employee. What we found was that some people want 36, some people want 34, some people want 30, based on limitations from a benefits perspective. Yeah. There was certain things that we had to cut off based on rules and regulations, but we said, let's tweak this, let's improve this. And then we started to just listen to people of what their needs are, but also staying within our framework.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to be consistent. Just because this person's saying, I want this, you have to say, am I consistent among everyone? Can I provide this and still provide all of the things that we want to have? Am I being fair? Am I able to run a business that everyone is secure and knows that you don't need to worry if we have a cash flow issue? I might share with you that we had an insurance company that is not paying us, but we're okay because
you've created
to have a foundation that everyone can feel stable. And I think that for Gen Z, sometimes it's not knowing, not being out there, not seeing that some companies are paying their bills month to month, and that maybe they can get this really high rate somewhere, but are they going to have a security when there's a CMS change occurring this year? Yeah. Are they going to have security when there's a speech coding issue next year?
We've had that.
Are you going to have the security when there's a hurricane or
shut down for
What I'm trying to say is that I've made sure to protect and build in order to provide, but does it mean that I can adapt and change? Yes. I definitely feel it is important to listen and to adapt and to change, but to stay consistent. That is big for culture. Culture is about being consistent, and for me to be able to, at any time anyone comes to me with a proposal, I'm going to look at my entire staff and say, am I being consistent? Because that's important for the culture.
So then how does this translate? We have a new initiative we're doing with these wellness programs that kind of translates with our parents, because we have some parents who'll come in and they don't qualify for services necessarily because it's not medically necessary, but they're still struggling as a parent. So how did that blossom, and why is that important to offer these kind of wellness programs that we have where they're for families that maybe they had an evaluation and their child is doing fine developmentally, but that parent is still struggling, and we're trying to kind of, again, diversify but also help those in that gray area for stability.
Well, I talked about the 500,000 Florida children that have developmental and behavioral needs. And I think that if we can close that gap by identifying these children before they need the therapy because they're behind, we can start to say, hey, this is what you can do right now. So we do it through education with our podcast or by having different trainings that we offer for parents in our facility, but also through our wellness programs. I'll give you an example of one of our wellness programs. It's for premature babies. So you have a premature baby, they discharge you home, you're like, oh my goodness, my baby was born early. What do? I want to make sure that they're developing appropriately. The doctor might refer you if the child is behind based on their adjusted age, but you're like, what is even adjusted age? So we'll teach you. You as a parent say, you know what, I just want to prevent any kind of issues down the road. I've seen the prevalence of those needs for premature babies, that they're at a higher risk. So I want to prevent that. That's what our wellness programs are, for prevention of any of those issues, but also helping our families. Like you just said, as a therapist, we always want to give, right? We always want to serve, and we always want to say, yeah, your child would benefit, but it's not always medically necessary. So we talked about that bilingual family. It's not always necessary for a child to have medical necessity therapy. And so identifying, but we also don't want to turn those families, we want to teach them how to help their child with another language so that they continue to do that. It could be that they're having, we talk about screen time with children and playing with them and knowing how to play with our children so that we prevent epidemic of what's happening with screens and social media in our future children. So I look at wellness, we're thinking about wellness, right? I need to see a trainer because I need to work out. So wellness, now we're looking at children. And it was a gap that I found that we weren't fulfilling. I'm hoping to fulfill that gap so that our children can maybe come in for a couple sessions and be on their way and not need to see us for an evaluation. Or the other side, they come in for an eval and we just don't turn them away. You don't need therapy. They come back 6 months later and
now they're
behind. It's because they were that borderline.
Right.
So it allows us to be able to still offer that in both sides. And that's why we have our wellness programs.
I wish I would have had something like that because I had a preemie and nobody gave me any manual. Nobody tells. Okay, so Regina, my next question is for you. When we do make all these changes and you're here with all the staff, how do you possibly redirect staff members who are averse to change, you know, when they're not really seeing the grand big picture? The way that they did it is now being done differently.
Yes. I think something I've definitely learned is everyone learns and accepts things differently. So always adapting in the sense that I'm going to deliver a message in a meeting and it might be received differently to different people. So I'm always really careful that I come off very clearly. And then on the next kind of level, checking into and just kind of getting a feel of like, how do you feel about these changes? Oh, we're doing the sign-in sheet. What are you seeing? What do you think of this? And then when I do hear, oh, this is great, I love it, awesome. Okay, cool. What makes it good? But then I get the other side of it. Oh, I don't know. This is different. I don't know if I like it. Then I kind of inquire, where's the breakdown? Where's the hesitation? And what does that look like? And just kind of hearing them out, because sometimes people just want to be heard, but also when people are stressed, they only think about the now and what they're dealing with. So then I'm really communicative of opening up to the big picture, and I'll tell that, I'll be like, let me tell you the long-term effect of why we're doing it this way. Let's talk about like a schedule change, right? If someone wants a schedule change right now and they think, I need it right now, but really we're looking at the why of, well, your kids you see right now aren't going to get service for 4 weeks if you do it this way. That's so sad. What's going to happen to those families? Whatever going to happen to those children with 4 weeks of infrequent therapy?
Because they don't see it.
They just don't see it. And I don't ever make someone feel bad about it or say, oh, that therapist is not thinking. They don't know. You know, I don't know what they're going through and the stress that they're dealing with too. So I always try to come off very empathetic of here's a change. This is the why. And I'm trying to be as clear as with that. But I think also the check-ins too always help, because some people just need to simmer on information too. They might be fine with a decision, sleep on it, and then be like, oh, I just thought of this. I don't understand why this is happening. And then other people are the other way around. They call my knee-jerk reactors, where they react a certain way to a change, but then they simmer on it and they're fine about a change. Everyone kind of learns and processes things differently, but I think the big picture is always explaining the why. This isn't just happening because we wanted to in this moment. There's a reason, a bigger thing to be held by doing it this way.
And I was going to say, it is so important for our leaders to do that, because I share with the directors in the director meeting, so that includes clinical managers, clinical leads, rehab directors, and any of the executive team. And so when we're making decisions or when things are occurring, we're going to that team right there. They are the voice for their staff. So when things come either from the staff up, so up to, hey, we need to make some changes here, or from the leadership saying we need to make changes here. The most important thing is that dialogue in those check-ins and staff meetings, that things are stated the right way, but then if there is changes that need to occur, that the solutions are heard. I love the why behind it. Sometimes we all don't recognize it's a blind spot. We look at ourselves and what's going on in our lives and don't think about how that impacts the big picture. That's so normal to do. So we think that it is great to be able to share that. And I think that that's so important when we look at leadership growth within our company. We're looking at who is really good at sharing that why. Because you can be a great manager but not a great leader. So you may know how to manage things, but are you able to lead people is about being able to find their strengths, to understand how they communicate, to let them, if you know that there are people that need to simmer, are they quiet leaders? So it's really gauging that, but then also looking at us as a solution-oriented company. Even when I look at advocacy, it's like people will constantly complain, but what are you doing to help it? What have you tried? Right. So definitely a very much of a solution oriented.
I think sometimes when we're all in these meetings, I have aha moments. I hear people talk and explain how they feel and why they feel it. And I say to myself, now I understand why they feel this way. Right. But if I didn't listen to them and investigate, we have this dialogue together, I would have just said no to what they were thinking or reacted a certain way. But listening is really important.
And I think connecting with that person to really read the room. To get a feeling of what is exactly going on.
Understanding what's happening outside is just these
And I think
walls.
that's something that you do a really good job of. You know each employee. And you know, are they someone that likes to simmer on things? Are they someone that's vocal? Are they just stressed because something's going on in their personal life? Whatever that is. And so I think that is part of that executive team of like understanding and really hearing those things out, and then being able to say, okay, I can see what's going on here. This is a person that's constantly feeling, what can we do? Maybe we don't need to make a big decision right now. Maybe we need to sit back, process this, and give this person some space. So I think that it is about reading the room. It's about connecting and figuring that out.
And I think sometimes it's important. Sometimes people will knock on my door and be like, do you have a minute? And I have my headset on and I'm typing and I'm on the phone or whatever. But I feel like I always want to say yes to them because in that moment,
you don't
something
know.
Could be really wrong. They could need something, and I don't want to miss that moment.
Same. Exactly the same.
Aimee, do you have any last thoughts about where we're going in the future for our listeners?
So I think that I want to go back to growth. And so at PPT, growth is about being forward thinking. Growth is about looking ahead and not reacting, but being proactive. I'd like to share that I myself am solution-oriented. I think that I'm involved in advocacy, so I don't just sit back and watch what's happening. I go out there and work on teams to execute and improve things. I think that the same ask for therapists to do is always looking at the mission and empowering children, families, and the community. How do you do that? I think that we all have our stuff, and that's normal. As a company, I look at forward thinking, understanding that you have to be flexible, that you have to be adaptable, that we do have a recipe for success. I believe that we've had that foundation for 15 years. That's a long time to be able to say that we have the foundations in place, and now it's just about looking at growth in that way. I think it's about being ready, not being reactive, being ready, and surrounding yourself by great people. And I believe that we have an amazingly great team. We have a great culture. That culture comes from forward thinking about consistency, and for each person that works here really wanting to make a difference in children's lives. And I think that anyone that's here, it's not a company that we come in and out constantly. It is a company that we have a team of therapists and we work together for the greater community. And I am excited about our nonprofit wing because I really feel like it's something we've done already for 15 years, but to have that really helps us to expand and help not only our local South Florida community, but also our greater community, including nationally, and within our local Florida.
Great.
I love
Awesome.
it. Well, thank you, Aimee, for coming on because we know your time is very valuable.
And it's all about connecting, and it's important to continue to do that. And I think this is my way of being able to share with people my heart and my desire to make a difference. So.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for joining us on another episode with Beyond the Caseload. I'm Regina, this is Tara, and you heard it from Aimee Brueck. We will see you next time on our next episode.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Caseload. Before we wrap up, a huge thank you to our sponsor, Galileo for Kids, a science-backed whole-body vibration supporting strength, balance, and meaningful progress in pediatric therapy. If today's episode resonated with you, share it with a colleague or a friend who could use it. And don't forget to follow so you never miss an episode. Until next time, take care of your kids, your caseload, and yourself, because there's always more beyond the caseload.